And we're live. Welcome. Welcome to Break Up with Retail and Fall in Love with a New Job. I'm going to teach you tonight about how we help pharmacists find jobs they love, and specifically how we help retail pharmacists escape the metric-driven, crazy environment and get into jobs where they feel in control and loving what they do. Tonight, I am joined with a lovely pharmacist, Dr. Chris Baechle, who is one of our Happy PharmD coaches. We were supposed to be joined tonight by two additional pharmacists, both former coaching clients of Chris. One, Michaela, who had to pick up an emergency shift, and then another pharmacist whose wife is probably delivering a baby as we speak. So, and on top of all of this as well, I also have a winter storm outside. So fingers crossed, internet's going to work this entire time because we're supposed to get like 12 inches of snow. So welcome. Hey, I'd love to hear in the chat, are you experiencing a winter storm right now? If so, cuddle up. We're going to talk tonight. We're going to help you with your career. And I'm excited to jump into this.
Or I can just brag it's 70 degrees here, Alex.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, okay. Don't.
I need to open up some windows here. So,
yeah, that's nice. I am Dr. Alex Barker. I'm the founder of the Happy PharmD. We are a dynamic career coach firm that focuses exclusively on helping pharmacists discover new futures, new careers, and new passions for our profession. I'm very blessed because I get to say I love what I do. I love helping pharmacists get new awesome jobs. And you may have seen some of our clients out there in the LinkedIn sphere, not so much on YouTube, but we've interacted with a lot of them and coached a few of them, like Timothy Ulbrich, Brittany Hoffman-Eubanks. And you may have seen some of our coaches as well, like Jackie Boyle, Laura LeCarey, Janan Sarwar. In fact, I think I see one of our coaches here tonight in the chat, although nope. It's just someone by the same name, but a different picture. Okay, I'm not gonna. Phoebe, hey, plenty of rain. Be happy with that rain. Oh, 70 degrees. Everyone's bragging now. Well, wherever you are, welcome. Tonight, we're going to be sharing with you basically 30 years of pharmacy career coaching experience condensed down, and the lessons that we've learned with just specifically helping pharmacists who were in retail but have transitioned out of that. We're going to be talking about things like what kind of career paths are readily available to you. We're going to talk about some initial strategies on how pharmacists get out of those positions. And we're going to talk to you at the very end about a group coaching program that's going to be run by Chris. I'm pointing in the right way. And Chris will be leading this group. It's only a limited space for pharmacists who want to get out now, who want to make that transition into a job you love. You're going to want to hear about it because we do some pretty bold things in our program, like the fact that we guarantee that you're going to get a job you like at least, if not love, within 12 months. So, Chris, I know that we were going to be talking to two pharmacists today, sharing their story, but I hope you don't mind that we're going to dig into your story. Is that okay?
Sure.
So, Chris, you were working in retail. Now, you worked in retail straight out of pharmacy school, correct?
Yep. During and after, like teching before and then pharmacist, but all retail.
Manager also, right?
You froze for a second.
Oh, sorry. You rose to a manager level?
Yep. After 2 years, not even a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah.
What was your experience like working in a retail chain?
I didn't know anything different. So for me, it was for the first, I guess you could call it the honeymoon phase was fine. For the first couple of years. And then I took over manager, was very eager or hungry to move up the ladder, as I think a lot of us are, or most of us are. And yeah, I think just like the stress started hitting me, but also kind of just like the trying the struggle to balance work and life, and kind of having trouble turning off, especially in a manager role, right? And yeah, I feel like it kind of hit me, and then eventually, I mean, you know the story, but my wife pushed me into finding a coach, which happened to be this guy, and the rest is history. So
Yeah, your wife is intense. That was the first time as a coach that I was interviewed by a spouse, and drilling me on questions on how I was going to help you and what kind of work we were going to do together. I was intimidated. I'm not going to lie. I was very. It just didn't. I did not expect that.
yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember that night, and yeah, and we still joke about it even after the last time we saw each other in
I've had
person.
the pleasure of meeting your wife. Yes, she's very nice outside of the coach setting. Absolutely pleasant, wonderful, wonderful person.
But I think a lot of people could probably relate to needing that extra push. For me, I kind of didn't want to ask for help, and she kind of pushed me towards that direction, but in a good way. Like just like, oh, you maybe should try something different. You know, check out people who specialize in pharmacy, because she had a coach herself for her business. So, yeah.
I think a lot of pharmacists. I saw one pharmacist quote on one of my LinkedIn comments one time who said, "Pharmacists help everyone else first and themselves last," and that really struck a chord with me because we it's very easy to think, oh, things are going to get better. The work conditions are not going to be so bad. Let me just get through this flu season, right? Um, and then maybe I'll try to get a job after that point. I'll start looking. Why did your wife think that you needed help?
I think it was just like the whether it was having trouble sleeping or just the anxiety of the stress of the job, the crazy hours, just kind of taking a toll on me, in general. And just knowing that there were better options out there. There had to be better options out there. But I think like what you were saying kind of hit the nail on the head, though. I feel like a lot of us, even though maybe we don't love our job, or we want to change, you're kind of comfortable with that, even like with staying, even though you don't enjoy it because it's what you're used to, until you learn more about what's out there or have the help to the tools to know what to do to make that transition. Change is scary, even though as much as you might dislike your current role, I think a lot of people are just kind of they're used to it, so they're like, oh, I don't like it, but I'm comfortable with it, I guess. And that making change is even more terrifying for a lot of people, myself included, at that time.
Yeah, Brooke shares, yes, constantly thinking it'll get better in X amount of time, and it didn't. It reminds me of things that my manager would say, like, oh, just wait till this person comes back from leave. Just wait until we get through this fiscal year. Just wait until we do this. And usually what would happen is I would just get more responsibility, like an additional task. Like, oh, now you should do this. Now you should do that. Um, it doesn't go away. Oh man, Grenal shares heart palpitations. Yes. And lost empathy. Yeah, these are all signs of burnout. Um, I see an end date there, 2015. I'm hoping that stopped for you. But yeah, there's a lot of consequences to these work environments, and we could have a whole other discussion, probably more of a podcast, Chris, talking about like how retail and pharmacy is now trying to change, and there's this incorrect dogma being pushed about how there's a shortage of pharmacists. There's not. There is a shortage, but it's of companies treating pharmacists well. That's what's in shortage. It's not that we don't have too many pharmacists. And you mentioned the belief that you said you had about there had to be something better. When you had that belief, did you have an idea of what you wanted to get into?
Honestly, I would say, yeah, probably not. I think I had an idea of what I wanted my day to look like, but I had no idea of what I wanted to do. Like, I knew I didn't want the long hours. I wanted the more flexible schedule, weekends off, or at least not working, 12-hour days or what have you, a lunch, right? Anything like that. So I think I knew what I wanted it to, the design of the day, but I don't think I knew exactly what type of, what I wanted to do in pharmacy.
Yeah, I think a lot of pharmacists feel that way, right? Like they know I don't want to work 12-hour shifts anymore. I don't want to work night shift. I don't want to work weekends. I'd love remote work, but most people don't understand like what paths are out there that can do that. And so, in our program, one of the things that we try to focus on is understanding really 5 core things about you. And we can't get into all of them in great detail, but they are your strengths, your vision, like what do you want from your career, what's most important to you, your values, so the things that are most important to you, like what you actually care about, your passions, and then your personality. When you really understand these 5 things, it helps a coach really understand how to match you into the different career paths. So, Chris, one of the reasons why we brought you here is to talk about your experience in working with retail pharmacists, although I know you don't do that, or you haven't done that exclusively, but you have helped quite a few pharmacists get into various different career paths. So what are some of those paths?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many options out there. I mean, and it comes down to a lot of times, and we'll probably get into it too, networking, right? Talking to a lot of people, but finding out, whether it's obviously there's academia, there's specialty or clinical. So I feel like clinical can kind of, you could add anything to that, right? In terms of, I mean, there's obviously hospital. There is pharma, right, which the list is endless in that path, right? I mean, there's so many different options. Pharmacovigilance, you name it, right? I feel like, yeah, I mean, there's so much out there. I feel like it kind of comes down to, and I think talking to people in these fields, and we'll kind of go a little deeper, but when you talk to people in these fields, you get a really good idea of what they do right every day, and you can kind of picture yourself in this, and would I like this, would I not like this, and ultimately start working your way or trying to progress towards that path. And obviously it's pretty fluid. I feel like it changes, right? So 2 years, or we'll go with 5 years ago, I was pretty sure that's what I was going to do, when I got out of college. And well, I guess 7 years ago now, but when I got out of college, I was like, I really didn't even have the consideration of doing something different, right? I just thought that's what I'm going to do. I'll be in retail. And it wasn't until I talked to other people and met you and everything, started hearing about or learning about what else there is. I feel like a lot of us just don't know. Or honestly, most of our friends, or classmates might also be in retail. So you're kind of just talking to the same group of people. So you're not really hearing about the, what's outside the box.
I saw a question about residencies, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But from a high level overview, the things that I see the most common for retail pharmacists getting into are specialty, starting pharma roles, medical writing and information, clinical practice, and we're talking like telemed, so remote work. These are easy roles. And now let's talk about residency or fellowship. Sonal asks, isn't it hard? It depends. But if Well, let's go back to what actually the facts are. Here are the facts. According to one study that was done looking at pharmacy jobs, and they asked the question, what do these jobs require when you are posting online? So they just looked at online jobs, not like, he said, she said jobs, or jobs that are hired internally. And they found that the majority of them don't require things like certifications. So that tells us that actually the majority of jobs available today don't say that they require things like more education. Now, if you want to get a job working in cardiology in the ICU unit, yeah, you're probably going to want to get a residency. But for things like pharma roles, like starting pharma roles, whether that's in medical information, regulatory affairs, medical affairs, or you want to be in the clinical route and you can get into specialty, you can get into remote fill, you can get into prior authorizations, you can get into insurance, PBMs, all without residency. This is something that goes down to actually a core belief we have in our company. You have a doctorate. If you're a registered pharmacist and you're listening, you have the equivalency of a doctorate. You're incredibly intelligent. You don't necessarily need more training or education for these kinds of roles. And I don't want to speed ahead here, Chris, but you got into specialty without a residency, right?
Yeah, and I think I just kind of, to piggyback to what you said, I think like imposter syndrome kind of gets us all too, right? We're all kind of just stuck thinking we're not a good enough fit for that because we don't have X, Y, or Z, or we need more. We think we need more. So I think it's very easy to all of a sudden you see an opening and you kind of don't even try, right? Just because, oh, well, I don't have that, right? I don't have a residency. When it might be something they might like, but it's not always a requirement, right? And the power of networking, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit too. But
yeah, I mean, it comes down to really having a clear picture of what are your options and then being able to narrow it down. So I saw someone was asking for those 5 things again, and I think Phoebe answered them. Thank you. Yeah, the way I try to remember it is SVVPP. Yeah, SVVPP. These are the 5 core things that we try to look at. When you really understand well what your strengths are, what your values are, these sort of things can help you begin to narrow down your options. Something that, in fact, let's talk about this. The fact that we're here saying break up with retail, it's implying that we kind of have this toxic relationship with retail right now. And I believe there is a day where the Happy PharmD is going to influence the pharmacy job market such that it's not going to allow companies, you know who you are, that create these work environments for pharmacists that are just toxic and they're bad and they're metric driven. But that's not right now. We're working towards it. But in the meantime, we believe that every pharmacist has the ability and the potential to get into any of the job options that we've talked about. Where the trick is learning about you and learning how to get you from point A to point B, the job where you are. I'm seeing some great questions here. So
yeah, I was going to mention, I like that last one there.
Yes. Is my shares, any tips for those that are new grads? I graduate next week. Congratulations. And only offers I've been getting are retail. I'd love to get out if I can before getting in. Well, congratulations on graduating. Congratulations on getting job offers. That's fantastic. And I agree. Now is the time to get out there and start applying to other jobs. Well, one thing I would share with you is picking one path. That's really the first step that, you're going to be working on in this group coaching program, Chris, right? Is picking a path. Now, we don't enforce it on everyone that like, hey, you can't continue until you do. But Chris, why do you believe it's important for pharmacists to choose just one career path versus applying to retail jobs and hospital jobs and maybe some random pharma jobs and maybe some tech jobs that you don't understand? Why choose one?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is exhausting. If you're to be honest, but no, it's in all seriousness, it's very difficult if you don't know. At least have a even if it went down to two, right, top two. If you have 10 things that you're interested in, that's just very difficult to make much progress there.
Yeah.
Even if you had, all 24 hours of the day to do nothing but that, that's still going to be hard, just because I mean, being able to focus on one, maybe two, is, especially with networking, which is I always joke, is a part-time job, if not full-time job, on top of your regular job. It's a lot. And it's also, and I always, throw out there, it's not that you're stuck with what you're, everything is very fluid. It can change. It's not like our parents or their parents who did this, right? Things change. And kind of like what you mentioned, looking back at like kind of self-reflection, figuring out what means most to you, your family, really helps kind of narrow down, right? And makes it something where you can put all your energy towards one, maybe two things, just much more effective.
Yeah, and even a quick reflection is I'm here. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but one of the things I would say right away is the fact that you're pausing before you accept the job offer. That's like a clear red flag that taking this job is going to go against your values, what you believe in, whether that's something like patient safety or you just value your mental and physical health. So, worst case scenario, say yes so that you can start paying your bills, but don't lose that energy in going after those jobs. And to piggyback what off of Chris shared, if you think of a career coach, kind of like a wilderness, what are they called? Those guys that scout national parks. A ranger.
Oh, yeah, park ranger. Yeah.
Thank you, right? A park ranger. If you think of us like park rangers, and we find you in this middle of the job market forest, you can go any direction, right? And eventually you would reach civilization, no matter what direction you point. It may take you longer going in some directions versus others. But any direction would help you go in that way. But if you want to go a little bit this way and then a little bit back that way and then back that way and then this way, you won't make any actual progress towards salvation for your job, right? So that's one of the reasons why we encourage people, whether you work with us or not, is get insanely passionate and interested and curious about one career path. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's one that you have some passion behind, you feel like whatever the work is involved, you would have natural strengths to fulfill you and satisfy you with the work that you do. Because if not, it's a wasted effort, and you're probably going to be back on the job boards within a year. Okay, I'm seeing some more questions here, a little bit unrelated, but that's okay. Yeah, Vickers shares this. He's been in retail for 20 years. How challenging is the transition to another area? What honestly came to mind, Chris, was like, who is the most experienced client I've ever worked with? Do you see how I worded it?
I was going to say, I was going to say you could spin that as a huge positive because you have,
of course,
you have so much experience, and think about how much pharmacy, let alone retail, has changed in 20 years, right? I can think how much it's changed in 5 years. So like you have grown so much, and over 20 years you have a wealth of knowledge, like you said. So that's exactly what I thought. There's always a way to think of it as a positive, and to be able to,
I mean, a lot of actually what we do when we work with people is we take these kinds of questions and we have to reframe them, right? Why? I mean, because the opposite is true for that question. For someone just who was new, brand new, I'm brand new. How do I do this? I'm in 20 years. How do I do this? Like, either way you look at it, like it's viewed as a negative, but it's absolutely a positive. How challenging is it? On a scale of 1 to 10 by yourself, 10 being the most challenging, probably a 9 or a 10. I wouldn't want to do it. So that's why you should work with an expert. Hey, you're in the right place. So we've talked about some career options and career paths. We've hopefully for you busted the myth. Do you need a residency or a fellowship to get into pharma? No. Do you need these sort of things to get into probably more qualified positions? Senior marketing director in a pharma company, ICU pharmacist? Yeah, probably. You probably want to get more training. But from everything we've learned, Chris, most pharmacists don't want those kind of roles.
True. I mean, or they might, like you said, after doing a lot of reflection, they might determine maybe they do want to really take the leap and do the extra training, right? That they find out that meets what they want to do, right? And we're not, trying to say, if say don't do that, right? It's all about figuring out what you want to do. But yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have helped a few people get things like residencies or high-level executive programs, but we have to admit that's the minority.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who we typically work with are pharmacists in the retail setting. In fact, I'm going to bring up a little graph here if I can figure out how to do it. I'm going to share my screen, and it's going to show you where we've come from or who we've helped specifically. Yes. So this gives you a snapshot of the pharmacists that we've worked with before they start coaching. So when pharmacists start up, the majority are retail, which I think the latest stat I saw, it was something like 62 or 61% of the profession is in retail, where it's like 25% are in the hospital setting. And if you look over here on the right, I mean, the careers that we help people get into are all over the place. The top being industry. But here, I want to talk about this. Look at this. We help people get into community jobs. What is that about? Isn't that? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Does that mean that there are good retail jobs out there, Chris?
I think that does.
That's probably not a message we want to be shouting from the rooftops, because guess what? There are still really great jobs in the community setting. Some of them are actually, the majority of them are independents, but some of the great retail jobs are things like clinical manager, some mid-level managers, people who work in operations, jobs in marketing, skills that are jobs that take your skills as a pharmacist and translate it into different avenues. And he's not here tonight, but Sandeep Chakrabarty, one of our Happy PharmD coaches, is an example of this. He was a retail pharmacy manager that took his skills in management and transferred them into pharma, becoming a marketing director. He's now had, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different job titles since I've known him. But he didn't get a fellowship, didn't get a residency, and now he's helped a lot of other people do the same. I've seen this question a couple of times. It's a very specific question. As far as pharmaceutical companies, what are some entry-level positions? What are some entry-level positions available? Yeah, there's a wide range of those. You're probably meaning specifically like ones that a pharmacist would be a good applicant for. But before I answer that, I want to back up a second. Chris, I don't think you've had any experience doing this, but I know that we've helped a few clients get into things like sales and marketing in pharma. Have you, am I wrong? Have you helped someone do that?
Not personally, but I know that many coaches or other coaches have. Yes.
Yeah. So it's probably below your knowledge level. I'm not wording this politically correctly, but every pharmacist could easily be a salesperson for any pharma company. That you're overqualified for the job, and you would do a great job if you're great at people skills and talking about a drug.
The thing I like about like pharma, which I think Deep used this before, and or other at least other people have said it as well. There's just in terms of like you think of retail or other certain types of pharmacy, it's you kind of hit the ceiling pretty quickly. There's not a lot of room for growth, and in pharma, right? Yes, you may have to start at like an entry level or mid level, but there's so much room for growth in either direction. There's so many options out there. That it's a really cool field for that reason too.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird and wacky jobs. I mean, we keep a list of the jobs that people get after our coaching program, and it's a smorgasbord. I get to use that word today, of options that are out there. And there's not a lot of consistency. But if you wanted like industry names, Selma, I would recommend looking into things like medical affairs, regulatory affairs. People often ask questions about MSL. I would say that that's generally not an entry-level position within pharma, although we have had success with people going from retail to MSL roles. We have a few of those stories on our website. You can go to thehappypharmd.com/testimonials, and you'll find out there how pharmacists did that. But also a role that's kind of separate, but kind of within pharma as well, is medical writing and or medical information. Both they don't require additional training. In fact, last year we had a group program where we helped people get started down that path as well. Okay, so we've talked about the different roles. We've talked about some initial steps that you can take to begin to kind of narrow down your options. And then it comes down to really, I think really two things, Chris, that we help people with after that. And that's standing out from the crowd through personal branding and your application. And then, excuse me, it's being insanely confident in that job interview. What are some of the common problems you've seen when you work with pharmacists and their applications?
Using the same resume for everything.
Number one, yeah.
Blindly applying, I would say would be the most common thing probably. Just using job boards and just applying to something, that might be interesting, and not speaking to anyone there, not networking, not just blindly applying, using the same resume. Yeah, those are some really big things. Very common.
I think there's an underlying problem, and you mentioned it earlier: imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that every pharmacist is insanely brilliant by default. And I think overall there's a lack of acceptance of what we accomplish and what we do. I'm going to be teaching next month at APHA's annual conference. I'm going to be teaching about interviewing and negotiation skills. And I did a little experiment, because one of the things that I feel like a lot of pharmacists don't understand is what's the value of their work? Like, what do you do? And I don't have it with me, but I did a calculation based on some numbers. Like, if you did 150 scripts a day and you worked 48 weeks a year and all these other things, how much money do you think you produced for the company in just profit? And I used some numbers, and I basically came up with one pharmacist working that schedule would create over $400 $100,000 in just profit with a bare minimum job. Like 150 scripts a day sounds like a pretty easy job, right? Usually, maybe. I don't want to bat at those numbers, but yeah, we create so much value and we tend to not believe in ourselves or what we do or that we are experts. I think that's a part of our culture as pharmacists, and that gets so reflected in how we present ourselves in the marketplace, in what we say in our resume and cover letter. I 100% agree with you, Chris. I think it's working really hard on one resume and then using that over and over again. That's kind of like having a really funny pickup line and just using that until you're 65. You know, it may work a few times, but it gets old, you know. It's not going to work too well. So what are some of the things that you try to do when you work with pharmacists on their applications and branding?
I think you have a better word for it. I was going to say action words or like fluff in terms of working on kind of highlighting your accomplishments, right? So in numbers, as much as we love numbers, highlighting things that you've helped work on or improve, but also kind of like when we went back to talking about focusing on specific career paths, right? So not having like 10 that you're going for, but when you're applying to different jobs, maybe creating different folders so you can kind of really be organized instead of, and you can have one general resume that like in terms of your template, right? And then be able to tweak it based on what you're applying for. So you might, if it's depending on what that role involves, right? You might be able to pick out certain parts of your current role and highlight more of that where, if you were applying to, let's say for like a teaching job, maybe, in terms of how many scripts you fill might not be as important, but maybe how you counsel patients or taught employees or, focusing on different things depending on the role that you're applying to and really having a highlighting emphasis on that. And being able to say, I can't emphasize the importance of being organized with it. So creating multiple folders, I find to be very helpful too.
Yeah, something we like to work on at the end of your program is that you're going to have the startings of what we like to call a career portfolio. This is an advanced version of basically a CV, but with a lot more compelling data, pictures, news articles, snapshots, and things become real. Because one of the problems that I find with applications is the lack of context, the lack of like, what's the impact of this work? So, for example, I saw two comments here that actually highlight this. So Phoebe said, 100 scripts sounds very peaceful. And then Karen said, hey, no, 100 scripts with no help is pretty awful. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the thing that I find over and over again in people's applications, especially in retail setting, is like verify prescriptions. Yes. Yeah, of course you did that. How well did you do it? Did you not have help? Did you have help? What were some of the metrics behind that? Was there a rise, a decrease? What did you do about it? How does your manager rate your ability to do these things? Although it may be annoying to acknowledge the metrics behind something, that's a manager is going to be the person who looks at your application. Without proper positioning and branding and being able to share really a new story about what you've accomplished, it is very hard to communicate what your true value is. But if you said something like, and I've seen this many times, like verify on average 200 to 300 scripts per day, per shift, something like that. It means so little that you may as well not even include something like that on your resume. It's just covering up space. But then if you're asking yourself, well, then what do I put on my resume, Alex? Like, I'm questioning now everything that goes on this thing. Good. You should. You want to make this your calling card. You get one shot. I'm so I was going to say, I'm so mad that Miggs isn't here, Chris, because he had this quote that he told me when we were talking about a month ago. But I said frustrated. I'm happy he's not here. He's taking care of his wife. She's having a baby. He's being a good dad. That's way more important than the Happy PharmD. So that's that. But what he told me was that the manager that hired him said, we had over 200 applicants on this job posting, and you had the best application. Well, high five, Chris. Like, that was all you. Way to go. He knew how to position himself. He knew what to say on the resume that would make that manager care about his application.
I think one other thing to add, though, too, is anything you put in there is fair game for the interview, right? So
sure,
I think a lot of people throw in fluff or not fluff, but random things that maybe aren't relevant anymore, or it was a long time ago, and really be ready to speak to everything and anything that's on your resume. Just so you're fully prepared to tell the story or to explain why or what happened with everything you put on there for the interview.
For some people, that makes them think about gaps in employment, being let go or fired. Yes, be prepared for the interview to be able to address those things and learn how to reframe. So let's talk about that a little bit, because that's ideally the next step after applying to something is the interview. So what are some of the things that you work on with pharmacists in like that group coaching setting, helping them to get ready for interviews?
So, I mean, obviously interviews are probably most people's one of the most feared things, I would say. I'm the odd man out. I enjoy those kind of things. I enjoy preparing for them. I enjoy doing them.
You mean an actual interview and not?
Yeah, in general.
Okay.
Well, I mean, been doing the podcast for a while. I mean, you get pretty comfortable, right? But anyways, I find it fun. So for me, I first try to say, try to treat it like you're talking to someone, right? So try not to come about like robotic. Obviously it's normal to be nervous. Back in high school, my old band director had said you should be nervous if you're not nervous. So it's normal to be nervous. That's a good thing. But memorizing answers, being robotic, is not the best way to go, at least personally to me. I feel like being prepared, kind of having an idea, bullet points of what kind of questions might be asked and how you would answer it. Absolutely. That's great to prepare that way, but I wouldn't memorize. You want to come off more candid, you're having a conversation, and comfortable, but essentially telling a story to someone, to a friend or, someone, a personal conversation, and not just, being robotic and, staring up at the ceiling, trying to remember what you were supposed to say. And taking a deep breath. If you don't, there's no reason to rush to answer. If you don't know what you want to say, wait a minute, count to 3 and get the answer. But it's okay to, you don't have to, a lot of people try to answer immediately and they kind of trip over themselves a little bit. And it's kind of probably a nervous thing. Absolutely. You're trying to just, answer quickly and stand out, but it's okay to take your time for a second and give a better answer instead of rushing to answer the question.
I know that one of the things you do with your clients is mock interviews. And I remember when I first started doing those, and I remember thinking like, why are people so nervous? Like, this is a mock interview setting, like you're not here to, I'm not going to give you a job, but I remember being like so surprised by this. Have you found that as well, that for your mock interviews that this happens, and maybe what are some of the things that the common mistakes you see people make?
I guess not too bad. Maybe if it's someone who is, just doing the mock interview, right? So if it's someone I haven't seen on regularly,
Yes.
If that makes sense, because that is essentially, being interviewed by a stranger. So
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that. We do mock interviews for like non-coach clients, and you're right. Those are usually the most nervous.
But yeah, I feel like I personally like kind of doing question by question and kind of breaking it down instead of running through X amount of questions and then debriefing. I think it's helpful to let you answer the question, but kind of give you some tips during, like, right after. And I feel like I think a lot of people, it just kind of, they realize that you do have to prepare for it. It's not really something you can typically wing. I know some of us can, and interviewing is a skill, right? You have to practice it. You have to grow that muscle. So I feel like a lot of people, just being prepared is probably the biggest thing. You realize how, okay, I need to like think about that question a little better. Because you realize even then, like nervous, anxiety does show a little bit, but also even in that mock setting, but also just having a good idea of what you would say in that situation, so you don't get caught off guard. And it's good to get caught off guard when you're practicing.
Yeah, I agree that it should never be scripted, because you'll never memorize an entire script in a high tense environment, and you'll never practice again. But it is some kind of like going to a Broadway musical, right? You go there, and everything on stage, usually to you, an untrained professional, an actor, you probably think that everything is natural. It sounds natural. But that's because they've practiced it so much that it becomes that. But if you were to get all of those actors and actresses on stage and they've never read the script and you expect them to perform flawlessly, you're going to see a freak show. Actually, it could be a lot of fun, but not what they want you to see. And in the same way, you need to prepare for this interview. And I think what a lot of retail pharmacists struggle with is not knowing how to take what they've done and be able to translate those skills into this new role and how those things are related. I've talked to too many pharmacists who have gone through incredible stress and difficult situations. And then when they get to the interview, they kind of drop the ball because they don't communicate how they handle that stress, how they've been able to persevere through an awful tribulation that would send just about anybody, into I don't know, the shrink or a mental hospital. But when we are able to communicate our value, how we handle chaos, and how we create order from that, and ultimately save patients' lives, it automatically begins to create more value, and you translate that into the interview so much better. But it takes a skill, and it takes reframing what you've done confidently to sit in that interview. Now, I'm seeing some fun comments. Let's take a moment here to answer this. This is a fun one. It's sad to have to say this as a pharmacist, but I have actually had to explain in interviews constantly why I want to work in other professions instead of pharmacy. The mindset is that pharmacists aren't capable of doing something else, or why are you wanting to leave this paying profession? Please address this for career changers. So I think there's a couple of ways that I could take this. One of the things that I will share is that 95% of our clients stay in pharmacy. And I think a lot of retail pharmacists in particular come to us and say, I can't do this anymore. Like I have to leave pharmacy behind. And I'm very proud of our coaches like Chris, who better match pharmacists into different jobs in the profession, and they love what they do. But there are a very small minority of people that we've helped do different things. Real estate, finance, a comedian,
Well, and I think it comes down to like what exactly where we were at the beginning, right? You start doing the self-reflection and you figure out what you truly want to do, right? What
Yeah.
makes you happy and what's important to you, right? And that's what we're here for too.
Yeah. I think that question comes from, I don't know, a philosophy or an ideology that I just don't believe, which is you're making a ton of money, right? You should put up and shut up. And I think that's a really sad way to live life because of the negative consequences on your mental health, physical health over time. And I think actually this is a really, I don't have your name, unfortunately, because I think you're a third degree connection, but whoever you are who said that comment, I would totally spin this. I would coach you and I would say to the person who asks you some question like that, it must mean that you have a really good job for me, because I'm willing to walk away from a pharmacist salary, from pharmacist respect, and that the drive through which I achieved everything that I have to do this job. That's how much I want to do this, because I believe in your company, I believe in your system, your vision, your values, that much more that I want to continue doing this. I would not prescribe that for everybody. There are so many jobs in pharmacy that have different skills. There are companies out there that treat you better. There are companies out there that actually value you and support you. I just talked to a client just a couple of weeks ago who was telling me how they hired a coach to help her with training her to become eventually an executive. And we helped her get that job. So it's like there's good places out there still. It doesn't have to be just pharmacy. In fact, that's how I got started as a career coach. I was coaching people outside of pharmacy, helping them get whatever job, which I think just highlights our program and our strategy. Our job is to get you a job you love. Yeah, ideally that's pharmacy, but it doesn't have to be. You can take a break with your pharmacy career and you can come back to it later. And you'll hear the naysayers say, oh, that's a bad idea. You lose it. You don't use it, you lose it, and you'll never find a job again. And we just haven't found that to be the case at all. It doesn't mean that an ICU pharmacist leaves the ICU and never comes back. Well, maybe, I don't know, but usually there's more fun jobs out there. There's more interesting things to do. Chris, any final comments on this this discussion of this late Valentine's Day discussion of breaking up with retail? And
now I get that. Okay, now I get that I was comparing to Valentine's Day. Yeah, no. So I think just kind of adding on to what you're saying there, I think with the help of someone from the outside, like we're all stuck in this box of our own thoughts, right? What we think is out there, what we think we can do, what we're capable of, until someone else, outside of your immediate, contacts is able to kind of explain to you and justify, what else is out there based on your goals or your interests, what you're looking for, and that light bulb goes off, and it's a really cool thing to see when they're like, oh, I didn't even consider that, or didn't even know that was an option, right? Whether it's pharmacy or not, right, like you said. But I think it's really cool to see that happen, and you see it all the time, and that's the awesome thing about coaching and being through it personally, and it's just a very cool thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning. We should be transparent. Chris, I know you worked with me directly, and now you're a career coach. You started with us in 2020, right? During the pandemic.
18. Oh, sorry. It started with you in 2018, I think.
Yes, 2018. And then in 2020, you came back and you're like...
Yeah. end of 2019. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. So I promised at the beginning that I would give you an opportunity to connect with us. What your next step is, it's really simple, and it's scheduling a time to talk with one of our career advisors. What we want to help you do is get a job you love now. So if you're ready, if you're like, I've been trying, I've applied to places, I haven't heard back, I got an interview, but I didn't get a job I wanted, now is the time to jump in. We have a group with Dr. Chris Baechle right here, the expert. And in this group, he's going to be helping a select few pharmacists in our program for about 2 months, a little over 2 months. He's going to be helping people choose a new career path, coming up with a strategy, helping you with your application, and start getting job interviews. In this program, you're going to get a job you love. That's the sole goal of it. In these guided group settings, these are private settings. And the reason why we're doing it as a group is because there's momentum with these groups. You get the ability to work with other pharmacists that are achieving the same goal, that are wanting to break free from their retail job and find something better. You know, there's that old saying of like, you're the average of your 5 closest friends, right? We're not saying that you're going to be besties with your other pharmacists, but the point being that you're going to see other pharmacists work on this journey with you. Chris is going to be your job market journey park ranger and lead you out of where you are and on a path towards a career and a job you love. As a part of this program, we believe in it so much. We believe that our system works. We believe in our recommendations for the application, for our interviews, for choosing a career path, because they're based on science and they're based on results, our clients' results. We have a money back guarantee in place so that I'll let you just hear that. We believe in it so much that we refund your money if you don't get a job you want. So the first step is to call a career advisor. You'll be speaking with Eric or Tamar. If you want to know what Eric looks like, he got to host a webinar with me in December where we both had Christmas hats on and we acted like elves for the entire hour. He was awesome. You know, I want to encourage you, you don't have to live in these conditions. You don't have to be like Napor Kalki, who was falling asleep on the stairs up to her bedroom because she was so tired from work. You don't have to be a doctorate level professional and put up with the nonsense of crazy metrics, unrealistic expectations, and unmanageable workload. We know this because we are helping pharmacists do it every day, whether you have a PharmD or not, registered BS Farms, we got you. You have a doctorate level experience. So if you're ready, we want you to book a call now. Again, we only have a few spots available and we will be starting this group in a few weeks. So make sure you get on Eric and Tamar's calendar either this week, we have a few days left, and or next week so that you can get started now. Chris, any final words as we wrap up tonight's webinar?
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. Like, it's just very exciting. I'm always excited talking about this stuff. So it's just fun to hear, how you process it too, and see everyone's questions. And yeah, I think the group setting is very cool just because you get to see everyone kind of help out each other, and also to see everyone's different angle and opinion and things, and how they think about things. So it's also very eye-opening. So very, very awesome to talk about. No, thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming. Thanks for hanging out with us and for playing a little bit, like on edge. I'm so happy for you, Migs, if you watch this in the future, but you have to name your kid after me. Okay. That's the deal. You didn't show up to the webinar. Alex is the name of the boy. It's a boy or girl name, so it's perfect, right? Okay. So just want to have a few more facts thrown at you. Remember, 55% of the people we've worked with from 2020 to 2021 were in retail. but they get into all these other career paths. And the most common ones being things like industry, entrepreneurship, hospital, community, medical writing, and clinical pharmacy and academia. And just to show you time, like reference, what do you expect? Well, on average, our clients get a job about a month and a half after our program. And the cool thing about this is the only documented study we found shows that pharmacists who are new grads looking for a job full time, it takes them on average over 2.5 months. So we get you a job. Those are the facts. And I like facts. I like proof. I like evidence. If you want to hear more stories, you can always go to our website as well and see what people say about our program. And you can actually hear what spouses have to say about our program as well, because they talk about how their husbands or wives have changed because of the new role and what they now see in them. And Chris, I need to interview your wife when she gets available because I want to hang out with her again. And she's a load of fun.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again for attending tonight. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation with you there. So have a good night. Cheers.